The fluorescent lights of the Cleveland Clinic emergency room buzzed overhead as David Mitchell sat in the uncomfortable plastic chair, his 350-pound frame spilling over the sides. The antiseptic smell mixed with the faint aroma of the vending machine coffee he'd been nursing for the past 3 hours. His hands trembled, not from caffeine, but from the weight of what the doctor had just told him. Uncle Frank was gone. A massive heart attack at 52, brought on by years of untreated diabetes and morbid obesity. The same genetics, the same habits, the same path David was walking down at 30 years old. "Mr. Mitchell?" A nurse appeared in the doorway, her voice gentle but professional. "Your aunt is asking for you." David nodded, using both armrests to push himself up, feeling the familiar strain in his knees and the slight wheeze in his breathing from the simple effort of standing. As he walked down the sterile hallway, each step echoing his uncle's absence, he caught his reflection in a darkened window. The image stopped him cold. When had he become this person? The man staring back at him looked defeated, swollen, unrecognizable from the college athlete he'd once been. Aunt Maria sat beside the hospital bed, her hand clutching Frank's lifeless fingers. Her eyes, red and swollen from crying, met David's as he entered. "He kept saying he'd start Monday," she whispered, her voice breaking. "Every Sunday night he'd promise, 'Monday I'll go to the gym. Monday I'll eat better.' Monday never came, David. And now—" She dissolved into tears, and David wrapped his arms around her, feeling his own tears burning hot trails down his cheeks. Frank had been more than an uncle. He'd been a second father after David's parents divorced, the one who taught him to throw a football, who cheered at every game until David quit sports sophomore year of college. The drive home from the hospital took him past a McDonald's, a Burger King, and a Taco Bell, each glowing sign a siren call to his usual coping mechanism. His stomach growled, a Pavlovian response to stress and sadness. But instead of pulling into the drive-thru, David kept driving, Frank's last words echoing in his mind from their phone call just 2 days ago. "I'm tired all the time, kiddo. Can barely make it up the stairs anymore. Don't end up like me." His apartment in suburban Lakewood greeted him with its familiar chaos, pizza boxes stacked on the coffee table, empty soda cans creating an aluminum city on his desk, and his couch bearing the permanent indentation of his body from countless hours of Netflix and mindless eating. David stood in his doorway, seeing it all with new eyes. This wasn't living, it was slow-motion dying. He walked to his bathroom, stripping off his 4XL t-shirt, and stood before the full-length mirror he usually avoided. The truth was brutal. Stretch marks created a roadmap of his weight gain across his stomach and arms. His face, once angular and defined, had disappeared into rolls of flesh. His breathing was labored just from undressing. That night, David couldn't sleep. He lay in bed, feeling his heart pound from the simple effort of climbing the stairs to his bedroom. Every beat felt like a countdown. He grabbed his phone and started researching, not diet pills or miracle cures like he'd done countless times before, but real information. Obesity statistics filled his screen. 42% of American adults were obese, with obesity-related conditions costing the medical system nearly $173 billion annually. But it was the personal stories that grabbed him, testimonials from people who'd walked his path and found their way back. At 3 a.m., he found himself in his kitchen, opening cabinets and the refrigerator, cataloging the destruction: frozen pizzas, chips, cookies, ice cream, sugary cereals, not a single vegetable in sight. His credit card statements on the kitchen counter revealed the truth in black and white. $800 last month on fast food and delivery alone. $800 funding his own demise. David grabbed a garbage bag and started throwing things away, each item tossed, feeling like a small act of rebellion against the person he'd become. As dawn broke through his kitchen window, painting the suburban Cleveland skyline in shades of orange and pink, David made a decision. Not a promise for Monday, not a New Year's resolution to be broken by February, but a decision for right now, this moment. He found a piece of paper and wrote, Day 1, weight, 350 pounds, goal, to live. He taped it to his refrigerator, then grabbed his phone and did something that terrified him more than any workout ever could. He called his old college roommate, Marcus, now a personal trainer at a local gym. Mark? It's David. I need help, man. I don't want to die like Uncle Frank. Can you help me? The silence on the other end stretched for what felt like hours before Marcus's voice, warm and without judgment, replied, I've been waiting for this call for 5 years, brother. Meet me at Fitness First tomorrow morning, 6 a.m. We're going to save your life. The Fitness First gym in downtown Cleveland looked like a temple of intimidation as David sat in his car at 5:45 a.m., watching the early morning fitness enthusiasts stride confidently through the glass doors. His hands gripped the steering wheel, knuckles white, as his mind screamed at him to drive away. He'd barely slept, his body aching from the unusual lack of his midnight snack routine, and now faced with the reality of walking into a gym at his size, every insecurity he'd buried under layers of food came rushing to the surface. A tap on his window made him jump. Marcus stood there, looking exactly as David remembered, but with more muscle definition and a trainer's confident bearing. Almost thought you weren't coming out of that car, Marcus said, with a knowing smile as David struggled to extract himself from the driver's seat. The gym smelled of rubber mats and determination, a combination that immediately made David feel out of place. Everywhere he looked, fit bodies moved with purpose and ease, making him acutely aware of how his XXL sweatpants and tent-like t-shirt couldn't hide what he'd become. Marcus led him to a quiet corner, past the rows of treadmills and weight machines that looked like medieval torture devices. First things first, Marcus said, pulling out a clipboard. We need to know where we're starting. No judgment, just facts. The assessment was humbling. Blood pressure dangerously high, barely able to do a single modified push-up against the wall, couldn't walk on the treadmill for more than 2 minutes without gasping for air. Listen, David, Marcus said, sitting beside him on a bench as David fought back tears of frustration and embarrassment. You see that woman over there? He pointed to a middle-aged woman confidently working the elliptical machine. Sarah. 18 months ago, she was 280 pounds, couldn't walk upstairs without stopping. Now she's training for a 5K. And that guy? He indicated a man doing squats with impressive form. Tom had a heart attack at 45, same weight as you. Today marks his 2-year anniversary of joining the gym. These mirrors don't reflect where you've been. They show where you're going. The first workout was nothing like David had imagined. No heavy weights, no intense cardio, just simple movements that his body had forgotten how to do, walking in place, seated exercises, stretches that revealed how inflexible he'd become. 20 minutes in, his shirt was soaked with sweat, his legs shaking, his lungs burning. But Marcus stayed beside him, adjusting, encouraging, never letting him quit. Your body's been in hibernation, Marcus explained. We're just waking it up. Rome wasn't built in a day, and neither were you. We're playing the long game here. After the workout, Marcus took him to a small cafe next door, ordering them both breakfast. David stared at the menu, paralyzed by choices, his usual instinct to order everything fighting against his new commitment. Eggs, whole wheat toast and fruit, Marcus ordered for him. Protein, complex carbs, vitamins. Food isn't the enemy, David. It's fuel. You just need to learn what kind of fuel your body actually needs versus what your emotions are telling you to eat. The breakfast tasted different when eaten slowly, mindfully, instead of inhaled in front of a screen. David noticed flavors he'd never paid attention to before, felt satisfaction without the usual overstuffed discomfort. The next few days were hell. His body, accustomed to its sedentary routine and constant food supply, rebelled violently. Muscles he didn't know existed screamed in protest. Hunger pangs hit him like physical blows, especially at night when he'd usually be deep into his second pizza. He found himself standing in front of his refrigerator at 2 a.m., staring at the containers of pre-prepared healthy meals Marcus had helped him make, while his brain screamed for the dopamine hit of junk food. The third night, he actually got in his car and drove to McDonald's, sitting in the parking lot for 30 minutes before driving home without ordering, crying the entire way. But something shifted by the end of the first week. The scale showed he'd lost 4 pounds, mostly water weight, Marcus assured him, but seeing 346 instead of 350 felt like a victory. More importantly, he'd made it to the gym every morning, even if some days all he could manage was 15 minutes of walking. His co-workers at the insurance company where he worked noticed something different, though they couldn't quite place what. "You seem more awake," his cubicle neighbor Jennifer commented. David realized she was right. The afternoon crash that usually had him reaching for candy bars and energy drinks hadn't hit as hard. Saturday morning brought his first real test. His gaming friends had their monthly gathering, which always meant pizza, beer, and enough snacks to feed a small army. David almost cancelled, but Marcus had warned him about isolation. You can't hide from life to lose weight. You have to learn to navigate it differently. So David went, armed with his own food and sparkling water, enduring the good-natured ribbing from his friends. "Damn, David's gone all Hollywood on us," Jake laughed, but by the end of the night, the teasing had turned to genuine interest. "How much have you lost? Is it hard? Maybe I should try something too." David realized that his journey wasn't happening in a vacuum. People were watching, some inspired, some waiting for him to fail, but all affected in some way by his choice to change. 3 months into his journey, David stood on the scale at Fitness First, watching the digital numbers settle at 298 pounds. 52 pounds gone, but the victory felt hollow as he caught sight of himself in the gym mirror. His body looked deflated rather than fit, loose skin beginning to sag where fat had once stretched it taut. The initial rapid weight loss had slowed to a crawl, and the honeymoon phase of his transformation was officially over. Marcus found him in the locker room, sitting on the bench with his head in his hands. "I still look terrible," David muttered. "I've lost a whole person worth of weight, and I still can't see my feet when I look down." "Neddy, progress isn't always visible in the mirror," Marcus said, sitting beside him. "Tell me, could you do this 3 months ago?" He pointed to the workout log, showing David had just completed 30 minutes on the elliptical and a full circuit of weight training. "Could you walk up 3 flights of stairs without stopping? Could you tie your shoes without losing your breath?" David knew Marcus was right, but knowledge and feeling were 2 different beasts. The Instagram transformation photos he'd been using as motivation seemed like lies now, their before and after perfection, nothing like his messy, non-linear reality. The plateau hit in month 4 like a brick wall. For 3 weeks, the scale didn't budge, despite David following his meal plan religiously and increasing his workout intensity. His body, evolutionarily programmed to resist starvation, had adapted to the reduced calories and increased activity. The frustration was overwhelming. He found himself in a Wendy's drive-thru one Thursday evening after a particularly stressful day at work, ordering a Baconator meal with a large Frosty. He sat in the parking lot, devouring it all in less than 10 minutes, the familiar comfort of grease and sugar flooding his system. The guilt hit before he'd even finished, followed by a spiral of self-hatred that had him calling in sick to work the next day. Marcus didn't judge when David confessed his binge. Instead, he introduced David to Dr. Patricia Hawkins, a therapist who specialized in emotional eating. Her office in University Circle was warm and inviting, nothing like the clinical coldness David had expected. "Food addiction is real," she explained during their first session. "Your brain has been using food as a coping mechanism for years, probably decades. We can't just remove that mechanism without addressing what it was coping with." Addiction. Through their sessions, David began unpacking years of using food to manage anxiety, loneliness, and a deep-seated belief that he wasn't worthy of love or success. The divorce of his parents when he was 12, the bullying in high school after he'd gained weight, the rejection from Sarah in college, who told him she just wasn't attracted to fat guys. All of it had been buried under layers of pizza and ice cream. The therapy was harder than any workout. There were sessions where David left feeling raw and exposed, wanting nothing more than to dive into a bag of chips. But Dr. Hawkins taught him alternative coping strategies. Journaling when anxious, calling a friend when lonely, taking a walk when stressed. Slowly, food began losing its power as his only emotional outlet. The weight started moving again, slower than before, but more sustainably. By month 6, he'd crossed into the 270s, and more importantly, he'd gone a full month without a binge. His transformation began attracting attention beyond his immediate circle. His cousin posted a side-by-side photo of David at Uncle Frank's funeral and at a recent family barbecue, the difference striking enough to go viral in their extended family's Facebook group. The comments ranged from supportive to skeptical, with some relatives warning about gaining it all back and others asking for his secret. There was no secret, David wanted to scream, just showing up every day, even when every cell in his body wanted to quit. Just choosing the salad when his brain screamed for the burger, just getting up at 5 a.m. when his bed felt like the only safe place in the world. The relationship dynamics in his life shifted as his body changed. Jennifer from work, who'd never given him a second glance, suddenly became flirtatious, touching his arm when they talked, inviting him to happy hours he'd never been included in before. It should have felt like a victory, but instead, it filled him with a complicated mix of validation and resentment. Where was this attention when he'd been the same person, just heavier? His gaming friends, meanwhile, had split into 2 camps. Those inspired by his change, who'd started their own health journeys, and those who seemed threatened by it, making snide comments about him, thinking he's better than everyone now. Month 8 brought a revelation and a setback simultaneously. David had lost 80 pounds and could now jog for 20 minutes straight, something unimaginable at the start. But his grandmother, his last living grandparent, had a stroke. Sitting in another hospital room, watching another loved one fight for their life, the urge to eat his feelings was overwhelming. This time, though, he called Marcus instead of driving to a fast food restaurant. They met at the gym at 10 p.m. and Marcus opened it just for David. "Sometimes," Marcus said as David pounded his grief into the punching bag, "the best thing we can do is move through the pain instead of eating through it." His grandmother survived, but would need constant care. David realized that his health journey wasn't just about him anymore. He needed to be strong enough to help care for her, to be there for his family in ways he couldn't have been at 350 pounds. The 1-year mark arrived on a grey Cleveland morning in late spring, the kind where the sun struggled through thick clouds, creating a diffused light that made everything look like a faded photograph. David stood in his bedroom, holding up a pair of jeans he hadn't worn since college, size 38, a far cry from the size 52 he'd worn a year ago. They slipped on easily, with room to spare. The scale read 248 pounds that morning, 102 pounds less than where he'd started, but numbers had stopped being the primary measure of his progress. What mattered was that he'd run his first 5K last weekend, finishing in 42 minutes while his cousin's kids cheered from the sideline. What mattered was that his blood pressure medication had been cut in half, and his doctor was optimistic about eliminating it entirely within 6 months. The gym had become his sanctuary rather than his torture chamber. The regulars knew him by name now, offering fist bumps and encouragement as natural as breathing. Sarah, the woman Marcus had pointed out on his first day, had become a workout partner and friend. Their early morning sessions filled with conversation about everything from work stress to relationship troubles. "You know what's crazy?" she said one morning as they cooled down from a particularly intense circuit training session. "I don't even recognize the person I was before, not just physically, but mentally. It's like I had to lose the weight to find out who I actually was underneath it all." David understood completely. The confident, determined person emerging from his transformation felt both foreign and familiar, like meeting a childhood friend after decades apart. But the journey was far from over, and in many ways it had become more complicated. The loose skin that draped from his arms and stomach was a constant reminder of where he'd been, making him self-conscious in ways the fat never had. At least when he was heavy, everything was filled out, solid. Now he felt like a deflated balloon, successful on the scale, but still hiding his body under baggy clothes. Dr. Hawkins helped him work through the body dysmorphia, the disconnect between the progress everyone else saw and the flaws that seemed magnified in his own eyes. "Your body went through trauma," she reminded him, "both in gaining the weight and losing it. Healing isn't just about the number on the scale. It's about accepting every part of the journey, including the battle scars." The dating world presented its own challenges. David had joined a dating app at Marcus's insistence, using recent photos that showed his transformation. The matches came, but so did the anxiety. On his first date in over 3 years, sitting across from Michelle at a trendy restaurant in Ohio City, he found himself paralyzed by the menu, his internal calculator spinning through calories and macros while trying to maintain conversation. When she ordered dessert and offered to share, he froze, the simple act of eating chocolate cake feeling like a test he might fail. "I'm on a health journey," he finally admitted, and to his surprise, Michelle smiled. "My brother lost 150 pounds, she said. "I get it. But you know, one piece of cake isn't going to undo everything you've worked for. Life is about balance, not perfection." That concept of balance became his new focus. He learned to navigate social situations without complete abstinence or total indulgence. Thanksgiving with his family became an exercise in portion control rather than restriction, enjoying his aunt's famous mac and cheese in a reasonable serving rather than avoiding it entirely or eating half the pan like before. He discovered that he could have a beer with his friends without it triggering a spiral, that pizza could be an occasional treat rather than a daily staple. The rigid structure that had saved him in the beginning evolved into a flexible framework that could accommodate real life. Work had transformed along with his body. The confidence gained from conquering his weight battle translated into professional boldness. He applied for and got a promotion he would have never pursued before, presenting to senior management without the voice in his head telling him they were all judging his appearance. His new position came with more stress, but also more purpose, and he found himself handling pressure through lunchtime walks and evening gym sessions rather than vending machine raids. Jennifer, who'd shown interest as he'd lost weight, had revealed herself to be shallow and uninteresting beyond surface-level attraction. Instead, David found himself drawn to Carla from the IT department, who'd known him at his heaviest and treated him the same now, their friendship slowly evolving into something more. The anniversary of Uncle Frank's death approached with bittersweet reflection. David visited his grave on a Sunday afternoon, the cemetery quiet except for the distant sound of a lawnmower. He placed fresh flowers by the headstone and sat on the grass, something he couldn't have done a year ago without help getting back up. "I did it, Uncle Frank," he said to the granite marker. "I know you would have too, if you'd had more time. I'm living for both of us now." He thought about all the Mondays Frank had planned to start, all the opportunities that had passed by, and felt grateful for his own wake-up call, as painful as it had been. Standing in front of his bathroom mirror that night, David saw someone he was still learning to recognize. The face that looked back had definition, cheekbones, and a jawline that had been hidden for over a decade. His body, though marked by loose skin and stretch marks, was strong and capable. He could run, lift, play, live. The journey from 350 to 248 pounds had taken everything he had, but it had given him back something precious: hope. Not the false hope of fad diets and quick fixes, but the hard-earned hope that came from showing up every single day and choosing himself over his comfort. As he prepared for bed, David pulled out his journal, a habit Dr. Hawkins had encouraged. He wrote, Day 365. Weight, 248 pounds. Goal, to keep living, fully and authentically. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, the constant vigilance required to maintain his loss, the ongoing battle with the voice that whispered about just one more slice, just one skipped workout. But tonight, he allowed himself a moment of pride. He had started exercising at 350 pounds, and he had lost 102 pounds. More than that, he had found himself. The journey continued, would always continue, but he was no longer walking it alone or afraid. He was walking it as David, fully present, fully alive, one step at a time, toward a future he'd once thought impossible.